Amen. You can be seated. Well, hey, thanks. Good to be with you today. I'm Paul. I'm the next steps pastor here at Grace River, and it doesn't get much better than Baptism Sundays, so thankful that you're here for that. And we are in the last week of a series called Life Hacks, and we've been going through some kind of shortcuts to life that can help us experience our best life, that can help us kind of set us on a trajectory that we might experience the life that God has for us. We've been talking about some issues like anxiety, like how we think, like forgiveness, like these key big issues. And today we're talking about one more kind of simple, practical message that can help you kind of set your course on the right trajectory for your life. In third grade, I had a friend named Paco, and Paco was one of those kids that always got in trouble. And the closer in proximity I was to Paco, the more trouble I got in. You know, like every time I was around Paco, it seemed like we were getting in trouble. Paco, I remember one point in third grade, I sat kitty corner from him at his desk. And Paco had his head on his desk, kind of half sleeping like he oftentimes did. And I noticed out of his desk, smoke starting to come out of his desk. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. And then the teacher noticed, and we actually had to evacuate the classroom. They called the fire department. Paco somehow had set his desk on fire. But that was kind of how Paco rolled. Like that's just what happened. I remember at the end of third grade, Mrs. Ingman, my third grade teacher, she invited each one of us up the very last day, the very last moments of third grade. And she would call you up by name, and then you stood at the front. And at the end, she was like, "Welcome to fourth grade, have a great summer." But I noticed, like as we all got up there, Paco was still sitting in his seat, all by himself. I felt so bad, poor Paco. I felt so bad for Paco. Paco stayed in third grade another year. He was always a year behind after that. I actually went and looked up Paco a couple years ago. I Googled him, and it'd been like a couple decades or whatever. And I Googled Paco. I looked up his first and last name in my kind of hometown to see if anything would pop up. The first thing that popped up was a news report of two members of the Latin Kings gang that had been arrested. And this was one of the names. I was like, man, it kind of looks like him. I'm not sure, And then the next one, I saw that he was a fire chief in a local town. And I thought both of them kind of made sense, for where Paco was. And we've all kind of had friends like that, right? Like friends that, they just kind of like go sideways. And like the more you hang out with them, the more trouble you can get in. And of course, that can go the other way as well. We saw that today. I mean, that's a big part of even baptism. We see people who their friends are baptizing them, who friends have invited them into this relationship with God. And so we see that on the positive side, but so often we see that on the negative side as well, how friends can influence us. And I had some friends in high school like that they just were always kind of influencing to the negative. And my parents saw that too, like I would go and hang out with these guys and we were always doing kind of mischievous things. I remember there was this one time when my parents wouldn't let me go out with them, and I was ticked, of course, and stuff like that, and I didn't understand it, and these are my buddies, and why can't I go out? That night, they actually got thrown into jail for a hit and run. They had hit a parked car, then they went back home, and it was a parent's car. They're like, okay, well, now what are we going to do? So they told the parent, like, hey, we were in a hit and run, we were parked and stuff like that, and some car must have hit us. And their brains weren't fully functioning as high school students yet, and so they didn't think about like how this would all play out. And the mom is like, well, we need to file a police report because of insurance and all that stuff like that. So they actually called the police department. Of course, the police department had already gotten a report of a hit and run. And so they called them down to the police station. They all go down there. They actually threw them in jail to kind of scare them. The reason why they had gotten a hit and run is because they were shooting bottle rockets out of the cars they drove. And then one hit the window frame and came back in and was going off while they were driving. Like these were the friends, right? And my mom and dad knew, this is a problem. Like if you hang out with these kids, it's going to not end well for you. Like they're going to lead you down a path, or that I would them. And here's the thing, we all know and knew people like that. People that our parents often knew, like, man, I just don't know. I don't know if you should hang out with them too much. Parents tried to protect you. They maybe you even had a parent that moved districts so that you would be in with some different friends, or you went to a different school. There's kids that you couldn't go home after school with, because your parents are just like, man, I don't think that's good. And it always seemed ridiculous to me because, you're like, but these are the awesome friends. These are the friends I want to go and hang out with, because these friends, man, at their home, the parents aren't home yet. And we can have all the junk food we want. They got all the cable channels, and they got all the streaming stuff, and they got all the video games that I can't play at home. But our parents knew something about those friends, and it's something that then as a parent I knew. And maybe you thought your parents were ridiculous, but then you became a parent and you realized, oh, I get it, right? Because you started kind of tracking your kid's phone, and you FaceTime them when they're someplace to kind of see the surroundings. You kind of check in on them, right? Your kids think you're ridiculous, but you know the truth of Proverbs 4:23 in the Old Testament of the Bible, where it says, guard your hearts above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. And when it talks about your heart, it's talking about your emotions, your will, your intellect, kind of all of who you are is part of your heart, and your friends will affect your heart. They'll affect your heart. And because your friendships affect your heart, they'll help determine the course of your life. I'd say it this way: direction is determined by association. Direction is determined by association. Who you walk with matters. And my parents understood that, and that's why they didn't want me out that night, because they knew what I know now as a parent, that direction is determined by association. And that's not just for kids, it's for all of us, right? And it's true because you've experienced both the negative and the positive in your own relationships. Jim Rohn, who's an author and motivational speaker, he said this: you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. In other words, you become like the people that you hang out with. And we intuitively know this. Almost every single one of us has had somebody that we think I probably shouldn't spend that much time with them, because there's always kind of moving me in a direction away from the life that I want versus towards the life that I want. Pastor Jacob, our student ministries pastor, last week, he mentioned in this series he talked about thinking and how we kind of renew our minds. He talked about friendships, and he talked about how there's maybe not some friendships that you have to step out of, but maybe some that you have to step back from. And I thought it was kind of ironic because Jacob and I have become good friends, but then I heard that he was watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and I was like, step back. If you don't understand that, you got to go back and watch last week's message. Seriously, though, when it comes to friendships, this is tough because some people we've been friends for years, for decades. There's people that we will see at work every day, see at school every day, but direction is determined by association, and your direction determines your destination. Solomon, who is considered the wisest person on the planet, said this in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. He said, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools, and you will get in trouble. Walk with the wise, you'll become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. That's filled with imperatives and promises. Not this could happen, and if you're lucky, or if you're not lucky, that'll happen. He's no, this is the nature of relationships. You walk with the wise, you will become wise. You walk with fools as a promise, you will get in trouble. That's how it works. The people that you hang out with, they will affect you and affect the direction of your life. We want to compartmentalize it, and I think believe that it won't really affect us, and maybe we have more effect on them than they have on us, or whatever. We don't really have to hang out with the wise. It's not that big of a deal. But wise people understand that all of life is connected. Wisdom and relationships and influence and direction, and it's all connected. Today's decisions are connected to tomorrow's outcomes. So you need to decide today based on what you want tomorrow. The truth is, for many of us, there's decisions that we need to make, or even friendships that we need to kind of figure out how much of a friend we're going to be. And we are so slow to pull the trigger on that we don't pull the trigger until it's caused so much collateral damage They were like, it's just obvious to everybody, like I got to step out of this relationship or step away from this relationship. Your direction is determined by association. You walk with the wise, you become wise. Associate with fools, and you will get in trouble. Paul wrote in the book of Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, to the church at Corinth, 1 Corinthians 15:33. He said this, "Don't be fooled by those who say such things, for bad company corrupts good character." So he's talking about don't be kind of fooled by those who say such things. What he's talking about was there's a group of people that were trying to fool the church at Corinth into believing that when you die, if you're in this relationship with Jesus, that when you die, you won't spend eternity with him, that you just like die and it's over. And so basically like live it up because there is no tomorrow. And he says like don't be fooled by those who say things that just aren't true, because bad company, if you kind of give it a voice, will corrupt good character. That if you put bad company with good character and you just give it a voice and give it space and give it proximity, it will corrupt good character. Pastor Jacob tells the students all the time, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And that's really for all of us. Walk with the wise, you become wise. Associate with fools and you'll get in trouble. See, friendships form your future. And you don't drift towards wisdom. You drift towards foolishness. We don't just drift towards wisdom, we drift towards foolishness. And this is hard in relationships, but you've been there already. My guess is there's been somebody in your life at some point or a time that you were just like, man, I like the way that they treat their spouse, the way they talk bad about them, the way they're always flirting with other people, the way that I can just see they're unhappy. Like, I don't think it's good for me to hang out with them. Or you find yourself like kind of talking bad about your spouse or whatever, and you're like, man, this isn't good. Like, I think I need to separate myself a little bit. I need to take a step back from that. Or you got these friends and, you know, they love to spend money like it's growing on trees, and you're trying to do like Dave Ramsey, baby step one. You're like, every time we go out, we spend way more than we should, and then we come back, and we feel bad. We should got to figure this out now. And you need to think about, like, do I need to step back from that in some way? Like, maybe we need to have, like, you know, game night at our house and stuff like that and do something for free, or I need to step back from that. Or you've got a friend that always wants to study with you, but they're always just distracting, and you never actually get to the studying, and it's actually pulling you away from the direction that you want to go in. Now, that can also be the flip side of that, right? That can be the positive. Like when we get around people who are moving in the right direction, we get around some people who are in a healthy marriage, and it's like it helps my marriage be better. We get around some people who are growing in their faith, and it encourages me in my faith. You walk with the wise, you become wise. Associate with fools, and you will get in trouble. I'm not saying that you need to maybe stop or step out of your friendships. I mean, maybe. But there may be some that you need to step back from. See, we need some friendships that we probably need to step out of. We need some friendships that we probably need to step back from. But we also need some friendships that we need to step toward. In Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17, it says this, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. You need some spiritual friendships. You need people who are moving on the same trajectory as you. People who are moving in the same direction, who are growing in their faith, who are taking steps with Jesus. That's why the church community is so important. Like, we need other people who are moving in the same direction as us, who are headed towards that future that God desires for us. And it's not even just, I need a couple people who go to church, or I need some people who believe in God. No, it's I need some people who are striving to follow Jesus and live surrendered to him and walk in his ways. Because the truth is, you can be a church person and you can believe in God and still be a jerk. You can be a church person and believe in God and still be a fool. We need people who are moving in this direction of following after Jesus, of surrendering their lives to him, of trying to step out of sin and walk in newness of life to help us grow in our faith journey, and we need to be those people for others as well. I need people in my life who can help me become the best version of myself, who can help me become the person that God desires me to be. I want to be around guys who love their wives. I want to be around people who care about the spiritual health and life of their kids. I want to be around people who are generous because I want to be more generous. I want to be around people who pray because I want to be more prayerful. I want to hang out with people who serve others because I want to live more that way and not be focused on myself. I want to be around people who extend grace because I want to be more grace-filled. Walk with the wise, you'll become wise. Associate with fools, and you will get in trouble. Years ago, my best friends in high school, he was a year ahead of me. He went off to college. I joined him a year later. We roomed together for 3 years in college. He was best man in Jen and my wedding. I was best man in his wedding. We moved out to Washington State right after school, and so we would just connect on the phone and stuff like that. Then we moved to Chicago, and he and his girlfriend, and then eventually it was his wife. They would come and visit us in Chicago. Then we moved back to Michigan, like 30 minutes from them, and as couples, we would get together consistently. They had a baby. His wife went through and had a heart issue, so she got a pacemaker. Then she got pregnant again, and it was just a little sketchy on how things were going to go. And in the middle of that second pregnancy, she called me and said, "Hey, talking about my best friend at the time, like he's having an affair with someone at work, and he's leaving us and going to live with her." And I was just devastated. I was angry. I was hurt. I was devastated. I felt horrible for them. I went and had multiple conversations face to face with my friend, really begging him to. He was somebody who would say he was a Christian, and I was like begging him to reconcile, begging him to go back to his family, to make things right. There was just a point. It was like, I don't think this is going to happen, and he would not budge. He was like all in on this other relationship. There was no going back in his mind. I'm like, bro, just make things right. And even to the point where it's like, I don't think they're ever going to get married again, but you got to seek forgiveness. You got to look to make some kind of reconciliation. And he was just not having any of it. And there came a point when I had to say, man, bro, I love you, but he wanted Jen and I to hang out with him and this new lady, just like nothing had happened. And I'm like, bro, I can't do that. Whenever you're ready to make things right with God, whenever you're ready to seek some forgiveness, whenever you're ready to at least take a step towards your family and some kind of reconciliation, I'm here for it. But until then, I can't be your friend. I can't hang out with you. I love you. I can't just spend time with you like nothing happened. Because I was not influencing him in the right direction, and I was not willing to risk that he would somehow influence me in the wrong direction. My marriage was too important. The ministry I was a part of was too important. My relationship with my kids was too important. And it was a relationship I just had to step out of. And I would love to tell you that he made things right or whatever it is, but it's been over 2 decades. We have not talked since. Now, you might think I'm saying that you need to ditch your friends, ditch your boyfriend, ditch a girlfriend, ditch somebody, whatever it might be. And I'm not saying that, but maybe I am. Right? Because, listen, it's complicated. For some of you, there's some relationships that you should absolutely ditch. Do it lovingly. Do it gracefully. Like my friend, there's just too much at stake to just go on like it's no big deal. But there may be other relationships that you need to just step back from. That you need to step back from in that relationship to slow the pace of how much time you spend together. Because their influence is not good, and you're not influencing them or affecting change on them. And it doesn't mean necessarily that all contact is cut off, but we want them to see Jesus. We want them to believe. We want them to be connected. But guard your heart, because your friendships will affect the course of your life. Your direction is determined by association. Now, this doesn't mean that we only have Christian friendships. Just get in this little bubble, and all I'm going to have is my Christian friendships. Listen, it is super important to have friendships that are moving in the same direction, these spiritual friendships, right? But we are meant to do life with the people in our spheres of influence. We are meant to love and care for our neighbors and our coworkers, and to be the hands and feet of Jesus to those around us. We're meant to do that, and we're meant to do that, but we're called to love, but there's a difference between loving someone and letting them lead you. And I think sometimes we give ourselves too much credit that we're going to affect them versus be affected by them. In Proverbs 13:20, where it says, if you walk with the wise, you'll become wise, it gives that warning, associate with fools, and it will get you in trouble. In another translation, it says this, a companion of fools will suffer harm. I think what that means is actually if you hang around with the wrong people, you're going to actually take some collateral damage. You're going to get some shrapnel from the mess that is their life. Like when they make those wrong decisions, like it's going to affect the people around them. Jesus, he didn't just have like his Christian friendships. I mean, Jesus was a friend to many. Matter of fact, in Luke chapter 7, verse 34, the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day, they talked about Jesus. He said, the Son of Man, on the other hand, feasts and drinks, and you say he's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and other sinners. They meant as a derogatory term that Jesus was hanging out with all these sinners, so they thought he must be like a glutton and a drunk because look at who he's hanging out with. And although Jesus was a friend to many, he was close to few. In Mark chapter 3, verse 13 and 14, it says this, afterward, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called out the ones he wanted to go with him, and they came to him. And then he appointed 12 of them and called them the apostles or the disciples. They were to accompany him. Jesus didn't just gather a crowd, he built a circle. He loved broadly, but then he invested more deeply in a few. And real friendship like that is intentional. There's friendships that we need to step out of. There's friendships we need to step back from. There's friendships we need to step toward. Are they moving in the same trajectory as you? Are they growing in their relationship with Jesus? And if you want to be one of those friends, or you want those friends, you need to be one of those friends. So I want to just ask you a question for you to kind of navigate and think through when it comes to your relationships. Both how you relate to other people and how they relate to you. Are you becoming more or less like Jesus because of your friends? And are your friends becoming more or less like Jesus because of you? Like, are the people in your circle, are you becoming more or less like Jesus because of them? Are they becoming more or less like Jesus because of you? Don't just look for better friends, become a better friend. Surround yourself with people who are moving in the same direction. Direction is determined by association. So we need to be the friend that we want, which means that we're going to have to initiate. You can't just wait for the right people to ask you to be friends. You can't just hope it happens. You can just seek it out. It's worth the time and the effort. And when you find those people, be intentional. I want to give you some next steps as we wrap up this morning. 3 next steps I want to encourage you to take when it comes to your relationships this week. Number 1, would you audit your circle? Would you audit your circle? Think about the people in your circle. And just ask yourself, are they helping me become more like Jesus? Or am I becoming less like Jesus because of them? Like, are they drawing me closer to God, or are they pulling me further away? Audit your circle. And then secondly, adjust your proximity. Because there's some people that you might need to step back from. It doesn't mean that you can't ever be friends or anything like that, but you just need to spend maybe a little less time with them. And then there's some other people that you need to step toward. There's some people that you know, like when you're around them, you're better. When you're around them, your marriage is better. When you're around them, you grow more like Jesus. You need to take a step towards them. And so third, would you initiate? Would you initiate? Would you take the step in on those relationships? They don't just happen by accident. Invite somebody to coffee, to dinner, to golf, to whatever it is that you like to do. Join a small group when we launch those again. Serve somewhere here at church because it puts you in proximity with other people who are moving in the same direction as you. Here's what I don't want for you. Here's what I don't want for you. I don't want you a year from now wishing that you could come back to this moment and make some different decisions. Your direction is determined by your association. Be intentional about walking with the wise, because the companion of fools eventually suffers harm. Direction is determined by association. You want a great marriage? Hang with people who have a great marriage. You want to be a great parent? Hang with some people who you see, man, they're great parents. You want to grow in your relationship with Jesus? Hang with some people who are growing in their relationship, and it's evident in their life. You want to be wise financially? Hang with people who are wise financially. Your direction is determined by association. Walk with the wise, you will become wise. Associate with fools, and it will cause harm. Proverbs 13:20. Because here's the truth. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. So the question isn't even, do I have friends? But what kind of friends do I have? Are they forming the future you actually want, the one that you were made for? Are you becoming more or less like Jesus because of them? Are they becoming more or less like Jesus because of you? We've seen the power of friendship today in baptisms. Let's be that influence for others. Let's surround ourselves with people who can be that influence for us. There's some friendships that you might have to step out of. There's some friendships, for sure, I'm guessing, that you need to step back from. And I know there's some friendships that you need to step toward. Would you audit your circle? Would you adjust your proximity? And then would you take the step to initiate those relationships? Let's pray together. God, I pray that you would help us to take those steps that we need to take. For some of us, we know there's a friendship, there's a relationship that we need to step out of because it is pulling us away from you. And the truth is, if it hasn't already, it will cause us harm. And God, there's some relationships that we need to step back from because they're not making us more like you. And as much as we've wanted to kind of influence and impact them, we see ourselves drifting towards foolishness, not them drifting towards wisdom. And God, there's some people that we need to step toward. Would you give us the courage to initiate? That we would surround ourselves with some people who are moving in that same direction, who can help us become the person that you've designed us to be, to live out our life and mission and purpose the way that you've called us to. God, give us the wisdom to see who is in which category and to respond. In Jesus' name, amen.